Walk through the neon-soaked canyons of Times Square today, and you are standing where a pristine wilderness once breathed. Look up at the spire of the Empire State, and you are looking at the site where a colonial farm was burned to the ground. Touch the steel of the Brooklyn Bridge, and you are touching the backbone of a city that was almost destroyed before it even began. This is a city of fire and iron. In these streets, world leaders have been inaugurated, and entire financial empires have collapsed in a single afternoon. Great fires have turned it to ash. Riots have torn it apart. Plagues have emptied its avenues, and terrorists have tried to erase its soul. Through every catastrophe, New York has refused to stay down. What you are about to see is not just a timeline. Using advanced AI, we have resurrected the lost engravings of the 1600s and the faded ghosts of the 19th century into living, breathing scenes. You won't just learn about the past, you will see it as it actually was. Our journey begins in 1624. Dutch settlers, driven not by conquest, but by the cold logic of profit, landed at the southern tip of this island. In 1626, Peter Minuit made what many call the most lopsided deal in human history. He purchased the entire island of Manhattan from the Lenape people for trade goods valued at roughly 60 guilders, approximately 24 modern dollars. They called it New Amsterdam. It was a rugged, dangerous frontier outpost. To protect their investment, the Dutch built a massive wooden wall at the northern edge of their settlement to guard against attacks. They could never have imagined that centuries later, that very wall would be torn down to create a street that would rule the world's finances, Wall Street. But Dutch prosperity was fragile. In 1664, 4 English warships appeared in the bay, their cannons aimed at the heart of the village. Without a single shot fired, the Dutch surrendered. New Amsterdam vanished, and New York was born. By the mid-17th century, New York had grown into the strategic crown jewel of the British Empire in the Americas. But the air was thick with the scent of rebellion. When the American Revolution ignited in 1776, the city became a fortress under siege. George Washington's Continental Army fought desperately, but they were eventually driven out, leaving New York as the headquarters for British military power for 7 long years. Disaster struck almost immediately. Just days after the British occupation began, a catastrophic fire erupted in a small tavern. It swept through the wooden rooftops with terrifying speed, consuming nearly 500 buildings, a quarter of the entire city. The ruins stood as a grim, skeletal reminder of the cost of war for nearly a decade. Yet from these ashes, the city found its modern form. In 1811, planners made a radical, world-changing decision. They ignored the hills and marshes, imposing a massive, relentless rectangular grid across the entire island. Then, in 1825, the opening of the Erie Canal changed everything. Suddenly, New York wasn't just a port. It was the gateway to the entire American continent. As the 19th century progressed, New York began to outgrow the physical limits of the island. In 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge was completed, a miracle of stone and steel that proved New York could no longer be contained by geography. At the same time, a copper giant rose in the harbor. The Statue of Liberty became the beacon for the greatest migration in human history. Millions of immigrants passed through Ellis Island, bringing the languages, the cultures, and the sheer labor force that would build the modern Titan. But there was no more room to grow outward. So, New York looked up. The invention of the safety elevator meant buildings could finally reach for the clouds. What followed was a race for prestige, unlike anything the world had ever seen. In 1930, the Chrysler Building's Art Deco spire briefly claimed the title of the tallest on Earth, only to be surpassed months later by the Empire State Building, rising at a staggering 4 floors per week during the height of the Great Depression. It was a cathedral of commerce that signaled New York's arrival as the undisputed master of the skyline. Following World War II, New York became the unofficial capital of the world. As the headquarters of the United Nations, it became the stage where the fate of nations was decided. The skyline evolved again, shifting from stone to a sleek forest of glass and steel. Through the economic hardships of the 1970s and the profound tragedy of the turn of the millennium, the city's story has always been one of resilience. It is a city that is never truly finished, a living, breathing organism that reinvents itself with every passing second. From a $24 purchase in a wild forest to a $3 trillion global empire, the story of New York is the story of us. Our ambition, our failures, and our relentless drive to rise again. The island of Manhattan is gone, but its spirit remains etched in every brick and every beam. The story continues in the next file. Subscribe, and I'll see you there.